Howdy, it's Jim Morado, and this is May 2022. We're in Springfield, Illinois, at the Abraham Lincoln home, managed by the National Park Service. As you can see, there's our ticket to go see the house. Tickets are free. I think they're charging a couple bucks an hour to park there now. I don't know if they were doing that before or not, but it's the national parks. I don't mind paying a few dollars to park. But yeah, just wanted to take you with us. I actually taped our whole tour of the house, so I'm not going to say a whole lot. I'm going to let our great tour guide do the talking. And yeah, lots of cool stuff in the visitor center. There's the casting of Abe's hands and face. Those are kind of common. They're always cool, though. I almost bought a set of those myself, though. That's how common they are. They're not cheap, but you can find them if you want them. Little note about the tour of the house there. Great home tour, by the way. Watch the tour closely. When we go into the house, you'll actually catch our guide politely letting some people trying to jump onto the tour know that they need to go and get tickets. It's not hard to get tickets, but you definitely need to go to the visitor center first and get those and get it set up. It's a real simple, easy process. They have a really nice visitor center here, too, by the way. Lots of cool Lincoln stuff. We actually did. They have a little book where you can look around and try to find, it's like a scavenger hunt kind of thing, and you try to find what color Lincoln's hat is at different locations, and you can win some prizes. We did that. It's mostly for kids, but we still did it. It was cute. We got some Lincoln koozies and Lincoln tattoos out of it. Also wanted to mention that they had an author signing his book in the gift shop here. Yeah, there we go. That is Jan Jacoby. I think I'm pronouncing that last name right. He wrote a book called Young Lincoln, and it's kind of a young adult type novel, or probably middle school, high school type novel. But yeah, any age group will enjoy this. It's a great book. I'm going to put up a review on my blog, KentuckyTravels.blogspot.com, about it, because it's a really well done book. You can tell the author cares about Lincoln. He kind of channels Lincoln, in my opinion. And he's just a sweet guy. We ended up buying 2 copies from him. Got a nice signed inscribed copy for myself and my wife, and also got a copy for a friend's birthday. And it's just a really good book. I can't recommend it enough. And he goes around and does a lot of signings at bookstores around St. Louis and the Springfield area, and he's just super duper nice. And I'm glad we picked up his book, and I just wanted to note that. There's the corner where a lot of photos have been taken of the Lincoln home. There's a shot of the Lincoln home from the outside. Anyway, I'm going to shut up now and let you listen to our guide.
All right. Who's been here before? Has anybody been in the house before? A couple of you. Okay, great. Well, welcome, everyone. I'm Ranger Caitlin. I'll be taking you up through the house today. I'm your guide. A couple things before we go inside. Pretty standard stuff. I think you can all handle it. The house. Lincoln's lived here for 17 years. They purchased the house in 1844, lived here until they went on to the White House in 1861. And it is the only home that the Lincolns ever owned. So a very important piece of history. Abraham Lincoln, if you asked him, where are you from? This would be the place that he would say. So very special place to us. The house itself is 183 years old. And structurally, about 60% of that original structure is still intact. So, pretty amazing since the house has been open to the public since 1887, that would be able to happen. And here comes the rules part, right? It's the federal government, you got rules. Basic stuff. Since so much of the original structure is still intact, the most important thing that we ask you not to do is lean on anything. So don't lean on the walls, doors, door frames, doorknobs. It's easy to do when you're not thinking about it, but just try to be aware not to touch anything. The blue carpeting, kind of our pathway through the home. Upstairs, if you step off of it or you lean in too far to get a picture, you're going to hear an alarm go off. Don't panic. You're not in trouble. There's no FBI that's going to show up and put you on some federal watch list or anything. Basically, it's just a reminder to you, I better double check where my feet are and make sure they're where they're supposed to be, kind of thing. I usually just ignore it when I hear it. I hear it so often, it's just, I kind of don't even hear it, that kind of thing. So don't worry about it. If you do, it's not a big deal. Food and drink. We don't allow it in the house, but if you have a water bottle or a soda or something with the cap screwed on, totally fine. Bring it in, just don't drink it inside. That's the only thing. Pictures, flash photography, video, take as much as you want. We allow it. I know a lot of places don't, but we're good with it here, so go for it. The only thing with that is, especially on a day like today where we're pretty much running a tour every 5 to 10 minutes, is try to do it while I'm speaking, just so we don't accidentally hold up another group. Now obviously if I'm talking and you can't see something you want to see, take that extra second when we start moving to get the picture that you need to get, okay? We're not in that big of a hurry. Safety things, handrails. Stairs are super steep. So use the railings, that's what they're there for. I fell going up the stairs in front of about 15 8th grade boys last week. I tried to play it off like I was tying my shoe. They totally called me on my bluff. And I'm pretty sure after seeing the museum, the tomb, and the home, the only thing they remembered about Springfield, Illinois was me falling on the stairs. So yeah, try not to do that, it's embarrassing. And the boardwalks. Boardwalks are just wooden planks, so if you're walking the neighborhood, be careful not to trip. Some of them are just kind of uneven. They fix what they can, but you know, it's hard to keep up with all the time. So just double check. All right? Any questions for me before we go up there? No?
Approximately how long is the tour?
25 minutes or so.
Okay.
Yeah, not too long. My next tour that I have to take is at 4:20. So as long as I'm back here and by 4:20, we got all the time in the world. Okay? Mm-hmm. All right. What am I saying? We all are here for 3:40, right? Because I know there's a 3:50. Okay, perfect. I'll lead the way up to the house. When we get up there, we're just going to stop outside just for a second in front of the house and talk a little bit about the neighborhood. There's just a few things that I do like to mention, and then I'll take you on in, okay? All right, great.
And as you can tell already, we've got a great guide with a good sense of humor. I pretty much kept the camera running throughout this whole tour. I cut out a tiny bit of walking right through here, but you can walk from the visitor center to the home literally probably in 2 or 3 minutes. And it's a nice walk. They've preserved the neighborhood here too, which is really cool. And of course, Springfield is just loaded with Lincoln sites. I'll put up some more videos about those later. But yeah, enjoy this home tour with us for a moment.
Okay, folks, all right. So here's Lincoln's home, directly behind me. Pretty house, right? When they purchased the house in 1844, it didn't quite look like this. It looked more like that 1.5-story cottage across the street with the green shutters. As the Lincoln family grows, Lincoln income grows, and so does their house. So we know of at least 5 additions that they did here. The last one is the 2nd story, which they added in 1855-56. The way that you're looking at the home now and the other restored homes in the neighborhood, that's what they looked like in 1860. So that's kind of where we're at today, 1860. And as you're walking around the neighborhood, you may notice some empty lots. You're going to have to use your imagination, because in 1860 there would have been a home there. The reason there's not one there now, as you know, in most places, people build things. So we took down a grocery store, an apartment building, things that just didn't fit in with that historical neighborhood. So you kind of have to pretend. Most importantly for me, that you know about the neighborhood is that it was diverse. So this neighborhood was middle class, nothing special. A lot of up-and-coming businessmen, clergymen, those were the kind of people that lived here. And there were a lot of immigrants. Portuguese immigration, there were a lot of Portuguese people here. German and Irish people lived in Springfield, and free African Americans. One free African American man, Jameson Jensen, he lived in the lot that's between the 2 yellow homes down here on the next block on the left side of the street. He was pretty special. We believe that he may have had something to do with the Underground Railroad. But also, he was the man who took Abraham Lincoln by carriage to the railroad when he left to go to the White House. So keep in mind, these are Abraham's friends and his neighbors. Okay? All right, any questions about the outside before we go in?
Back in those days, would a 2-story home have been considered pretty upscale instead of a 1-story type home?
I think it was pretty normal. Their house isn't considered anything special. So all the rich people in Springfield at the time lived in Aristocracy Hill, which is about 6 blocks west of here. That's where Mary's sisters actually lived. So this house is pretty, for the time. Yeah, pretty normal.
Huh.
Yep. Anything else? No? Okay. let's go ahead and head on inside. It is, yeah. Thank heavens for that modern air conditioning. This must have been for his Thank you. So you have to play bouncer around here sometimes. That's about 30% of the job, bouncing people.
Yeah, this is for his long legs, not short legs.
Hi. Hi. Do you guys have tickets? Okay, you have to have tickets to come in. They're free. It's basically just to reserve your spot in the visitor center back there. Okay? Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah. Right. That's the whole point of standing in that room and staring at people. Yeah, his friend was correct. All right, folks. Sometimes if you just want to scooch up this way, I'll slide back here. The only ones that ever get me are kids. Like small children sometimes get sneaky and sneak in on me, but never. I always catch the older ones. All right, folks, so welcome to the home. Here's the parlor. Perfect place to start the tour because if you're guests of the Lincoln family, this is where they're going to welcome you. We like to say this is a formal room. Formal events would take place here. There are adult parties, parties that they were hosting constituents and political allies, all of that would take place in these rooms. It was kind of a Tad and Willie free zone in here, no kids allowed. I'm going to make you use that imagination again for a second. The back parlor originally was a master bedroom, so you kind of have to pretend. And in that master bedroom, Eddie, Willie, and Tad Lincoln were all born. And unfortunately, Eddie also dies in that back room. He was just a couple weeks short of his 4th birthday. He had tuberculosis or consumption, same exact thing. Yeah, some writers write it different ways. And then they had his funeral the following afternoon in this front parlor up here. So, a lot of memories in here for the Lincoln family.
Maybe nobody else came down on TV.
Right? And there are some stories of the Lincoln boys. Like when Willie dies of typhoid, Tad has it at the same time, but he just doesn't get sick. Well, he does get sick, but he survives, yeah. So kind of that, they usually are sick at the same time, but Eddie was the only one. That was a baby. Robert was a little bit bigger. And Eddie was also sick the majority of his life. He was just a sick infant child anyway, so it was probably easier for him to catch something kind of thing. So eventually the family builds the second story. They don't need this back bedroom anymore, so they just extend the parlor. And the back parlor is historically important to us because when Mr. Lincoln didn't have a party here, he used the back parlor as kind of like a library or a home office space. And he would meet quite often with his political allies and things back here in this room. And in 1860, the Republican National Convention was held in Chicago. A few delegates took the train down to Springfield, came to this home and offered Abraham Lincoln the presidential nomination of 1860 in person. So really interesting. A lot of discussion back here. It actually took Abraham Lincoln 4 days before he accepted the nomination. I don't know how much you know about American history or pre-Civil War history. Luckily for you, that is my specialty. So Democratic Party, pretty much pro-slavery. That was their thing at the time. But then we started adding states to the west, Kansas, Nebraska. Should those states be slave states? Should they not? Or if you have slaves, keep them, but let's not sell slaves here, kind of thing. Democratic Party arguing about all of that. Southern states like South Carolina were threatening on leaving the Union if we had a Republican governor. So a lot going on, or a Republican president. So a lot going on with the slave crisis, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, things like that. Abraham Lincoln would have known all that. I mean, heck, that's his job. He's running for president. So a lot to think about before he took on such a big responsibility. Eventually, he said yes, and he won. So we kind of know it from there. I will mention Mary in here though, because a lot of people don't know about Mary very much, or what you do know is that she was sad or crazy and only wore black and things like that. Mary in Springfield, totally different, not even the same person. Mary in Springfield, pretty popular, a lot of fun, hosted good parties. Also, Mary is really smart. She came from a wealthy slave owning family in Lexington, Kentucky. She had 12 years of formal schooling. You can compare that. Abraham Lincoln didn't even have a full year, less than 1 year of formal education. Mary knew a lot about politics, and she was pretty good at it. I think that's why so many people disliked her. Women shouldn't have had a role in politics, and every first lady leading up to her actually hated it and didn't even want to move to D.C., so she was an anomaly at the time. And Lincoln really respected her opinion. She was pretty smart, knew what she was talking about. So I like to imagine them discussing that presidential nomination back here too. I'm sure she was pretty excited about it. She had a lot of ambition for him. So it was a big moment for their family.
Was she a writer at all?
She would write lots of letters, tons and tons of letters. But we don't have like a journal of hers or anything. We also know that Robert probably destroyed a lot of his mom's personal letters, maybe to save the family from embarrassment or save some of his dad's more personal information, things like that. But yeah, she really wrote a lot of letters. All right, some original things I'll point out before I move you on, because everybody loves those original items. All of the black horsehair chairs that you're looking at, with the exception of the rocker in the front right-hand side of the front parlor, are all original, even the couches, which I love. My favorite piece in here, the marble top table with that big old mirror in between the two windows in the front parlor, that is also the Lincolns. The candlesticks on the back fireplace mantle are original. And this little, they call it a whatnot shelf, but it's the shelf in the center of the front parlor underneath the 3 floral pictures with all the knickknacks and the books on it, and that's original to the Lincoln home also. So a lot of cool stuff in here. Okay. Well, we're going to scooch on to the sitting room. Go ahead and walk on through the dining room. That is the Lincoln family original dining room table, and you can meet me down at the end of the sitting room.
Yeah, and again, having a great tour. Love seeing the original stuff. That really gives me goosebumps. On kind of a big tour, but this is a nice group. They're letting people look and stuff. Just a really nice tour right now.
Yeah, lots of people keep trying to come in your door.
Right, I know. That's the thing. Like, that's why it's locked all the time. It would just be always somebody knocking or.
Yeah, that's what they were doing.
It was really distracting. Yesterday, I was trying to give a tour, and we had just started, and we were in here, and there were like 3 small kids just banging on the front door. Just ignore them. I know. Like they're just playing.
Real quick, I wanted to mention our guide brought up how Robert Todd Lincoln destroyed some of his family letters. And that brings up a connection to the Kennedys. There's a lot of Lincoln/Kennedy connections or parallels. And that's one that doesn't get brought up often. A family member named Robert destroyed a lot of material after both presidencies. And I think that's fascinating. But yeah, she mentioned Robert Todd Lincoln doing that for this family.
You can also step in front of me all the way over here, because I don't need to see. I know what's going on in the rooms. I've seen it a couple of times. All right, folks, so I'll just stand back here. If you can't hear me yell, I'll try to yell louder. So this is a sitting room. Difference between the parlor and the sitting room: this is a family room, a living room. Parlor was for upscale, fancier planned events. They wouldn't have hung out in there unless they were in the middle of something like a party. But this room, I always talk about the boys. If you don't know about the Lincoln boys, especially Willie and Tad, they were really wild. If you've been to the museum, you've seen the exhibit of them throwing ink on the walls. They actually did that. That's true. William Herndon wrote about it, that they would do things like that. So picture them in here. Lincoln did say that it was his privilege to raise his children free, happy, and unrestrained of parental tyranny. So basically, no rules, free range. I do know the only time the boys ever got in trouble, especially from their mom, was when they were doing something dangerous, something where they could have gotten really hurt, and that's when they finally would be punished. But other than that, they could do whatever the heck they wanted. A lot of fun. And one of the things the Lincoln boys love to do, and when I say boys, that includes Abraham, is wrestle. Abraham Lincoln's in the Wrestling Hall of Fame, just in case you wanted to know. The wrestling matches between him and the boys would get so wild in here that the neighbors could hear it through the windows. So, a lot of fun in these rooms. Abraham and Mary loved to spoil the kids. Easy way to spoil your kids in 1860, pretty much exactly like today, was to buy them cool toys. And one of those toys is over there on that game table to the left. That's a stereoscope, the brown box with the eyeglasses on it. Works like a Viewmaster, if any of you have ever used that. Now, they don't like us to do money conversions here because it's a lot harder with inflation and things like that. But basically, that thing would have cost maybe between $500 and $1,000 in 1860. So really expensive. A lot of money, like us buying a new video game system, a new TV, something like that. That shows you maybe what kind of dad Abraham Lincoln was. He liked to spoil his kids, and he liked to spend money on things that were fun for the family, and that was one of them. Another way he spoiled the boys was with pets. They had Fido, the yellow lab. His picture's in the house across the street if you want to see him. He's super cute. But they also had a heck of a lot of cats. Mary joked once that Abraham's greatest hobby was collecting cats. He would pick stray cats and kittens up on his way home from work, and they would be running in and out of here as well. Some would stay, some just went right back outside, but that's the thing he would do. I like to picture, I read a letter that Mary wrote to a friend saying Eddie especially really loved the kittens. He'd try to feed them and give them milk and water and really take care of them. And so maybe that was an easy way for Lincoln to bond with a little boy that was too sick to wrestle like his older brother. Just a nice way to make a child happy kind of thing. So it's a good thought to think of. Some original pieces in the sitting room, other than that cool stereoscope toy, is the game table it's sitting on. Again, the black horsehair chairs in here are original to the home. And that beautiful gold mirror along the right-hand side of the room. And then the sewing table underneath it is Mary's. And the candlesticks. The candlesticks are original in here as well.
Is the wallpaper original?
It is not. So the wallpaper is a pattern that would have been available for them to purchase here in Springfield in the 1850s and 60s. And so it's kind of just we guessed. And the way that we guessed is based on those illustrations. If you see those on the floor, those come from a really popular newspaper publication. Those were published in 1861, and that's our primary source of what we use to base the rooms on. So pretty neat. Any more questions?
What about the carpeting?
We'll head upstairs, get a good look at the room on the left. That's a guest room. Oh, I'm sorry, somebody asked something? The carpet, the same thing. It's just a pattern they could have purchased. Yep, but
So
not
that would have been a style
All
and
right,
period.
well, we'll head upstairs. Meet me in the room on the right. Use the banister because it's original to the home.
Just a couple of quick thoughts in between rooms. At the visitor center, they actually sell a really cool stuffed, plush cat of Abraham Lincoln's, and I thought that was great. I had to, I bought one. I love that sort of thing. I think it's great that Honest Abe was a cat person. That just makes me feel good.
Yeah, we're sold out for the day, but you guys can get some for tomorrow when your kids come in tomorrow. Sorry, lads. Keep on sliding on in.
Yeah, there you go. You can hear another tour guide letting people know that they needed tickets. I just thought that was fascinating. A couple more thoughts real quick while I'm thinking about it. I love the little Viewmaster-like toy. I still have a Viewmaster, and I think that's like one of the coolest toys ever made. Also, Mary Todd Lincoln. Some people like to call her Mary Lincoln now, but Mary Todd Lincoln. I know I'm here in Lexington, and there's the Mary Todd Lincoln House, but there's not a Mary Todd Lincoln Library or high school. I think she's an underrated historical figure, often overshadowed by some of her issues. But, I think she's a lot more admirable than she gets credit for. And a lot of her family are buried here in Lexington, in the Lexington Cemetery, and they were firmly Southern, just as a side note. But big fan of Mary Todd Lincoln.
So make sure everybody gets a good view. Is that everybody? Is everybody? Okay, no, take your time. I just want to make sure you all can fit in here.
John, move in.
Here we go. Right. There we go. We can scooch on in. So, sir, if you want to come down here.
You can't stand.
Okay. There we go. Thank you. Right. That's okay. You got it. Okay, hey, so here's Abraham Lincoln's bedroom. We call it the Lincoln Suite. This is Abraham's half, and Mary's is directly behind me. Totally normal that they would have 2 separate rooms. If you were a middle-class family in the 19th century and you could afford to do it, you would. Basically, it just made more sense. It gave everybody their privacy, their own space. And Mary would have had Willie and Tad in there with her. They slept on a trundle bed in her room until they had their own room. Doesn't mean that they didn't share this room. It just meant she had her own room as well. So, kind of nice.
Get your own room.
Right? That's what I always say. Like, I have a husband and a son at home. Bring this back. I want my own space so I can shut them out too sometimes. That's not a bad trend. So if anyone asks, this is we're bringing it back. We're doing it. I'm going to start it. I'm going to write a whole historical article about it and put it in a journal. All right. Another thing super cool about this room is the wallpaper. So like I said, one room in the house, we know what the wallpaper looks like, and this is that room. We found a pretty large piece of this pattern behind this south wall here when we did some restorations. It was in such good condition you can still see the blue in it. It's really beautiful. And our curators are magicians. I don't know how they do it, but they found this pattern and were able to put it back up in here. So really neat. It's called, it's a French design. Mary would have been able to pick it out of a magazine here in town, but if you're interested in the style of the home, it's harmony through contrast. Harmony being the shade of blue in here, another room it was green, another room it's red, contrast being everything else. So yeah, there you go, that was the thing that people did. And while the wallpaper is pretty neat to look at, the most important thing in this room, and arguably in the entire house, is that desk in the back right hand corner. That is Abraham Lincoln's original desk. He was relatively poor when he came to Springfield in 1837. Legend has it, on a borrowed horse with 2 bags of belongings. Starts practicing law, needs a desk, so he buys this one. It's pretty cheap, pretty unremarkable, but he loved it. He didn't upgrade it, he continued to work from it. It actually moved into 2 different houses with him, that's how much he liked it. Mary hated it. She tried to throw it out and he kept bringing it back. So if that tells you how he felt about that desk, there you go. It caused conflict in his relationship. But who knows how he felt about it. Maybe he just doesn't like change and was used to working from it, or maybe it symbolized how far he was able to come. But that desk was special to him, so it's special to us. Historically, it's pretty important because we believe he probably drafted part of his inaugural address on there and the House Divided speech, if you've heard of that, that he gave here at the old state capitol. So really, really special piece of furniture. Other than that, the 2 other original things in this room that are really beautiful are his wardrobe and his dresser back there on that far wall by the windows. So some really neat stuff. Does anybody have any questions about this room before I move you along? No? We're not going to stop in Mary's room, we're just going to walk through it. But my favorite piece in the whole home is in her room. It is the dresser to the left of her bed on that far back wall. Mary came to Springfield in 1836, so a year before Abraham. She brought this dresser with her. It's a Todd family heirloom, and it's about 200 years old or so, so it's one of the oldest pieces in our entire collection. Okay? When we get to the back hallway, you all can take a good look at both of those bedrooms. Just don't go down the stairs quite yet. We'll talk about it for just a second. Okay? Great.
Yeah, and you probably heard, if you listened carefully, a couple of those beeps going off that our tour guide mentioned. You'll hear another one here shortly. I always love when I'm touring a historic home to hear about the wallpaper and the carpeting, by the way, and the research, and the layers that have been peeled back to reproduce the wallpaper. I just always think that's really cool, and there's always a cool story there. Oh, and I forgot to note the banister, original. The Lincolns would have touched it. I think when we toured the house before, I want to say they said that mirror was original too. I think there was a story behind that. I think I remember that. But yeah, the banister's original. I believe at the Mary Todd Lincoln House here in Lexington, when you go up the stairs, that one's original too. So it's exciting knowing that you're touching something that Abe Lincoln would have touched.
That's, I don't know where that's even coming from, so.
I think it's from here.
Right, it doesn't look like it. I know there's people downstairs too, so it could be from there. The system for it is in this linen closet, so even if someone's downstairs and does it, it's gonna be up here, yeah. You should see it when there's 3 school groups in here, what that sounds like. All right, so the back hallway, I'll mention briefly, it's plain back here. No fancy wallpaper, no fancy carpet. take the blue carpeting out, imagine it would just be the hardwood under here, just the wood flooring. Reason being, nobody comes up here except for the family and the hired girl whose room's on the left down there, and I'll talk about her in a moment. Also, just like I said, Willie and Tad would throw ink on the walls at their dad's law office. Well, they would get mud on the walls back here. We know that because Mary's friends would talk about it. So I'm sure you don't want to put wallpaper somewhere where your boys are going to be running up and down this area. And that's whose room's on the right. The boys' room, I'm sure you figured it out on your own since there's toys in there. But it's originally Robert's room. Robert's the oldest brother, so he gets his own space. But he goes to college in 1859. He moves on to Harvard. And then Willie and Tad would have finally been able to get out of their mom's room into their brother's room. And I believe they were, let's see, 1859, if Robert's 17, Tad's 7. So Willie was probably 9 or 10 at the time. So I'm sure Mary was ready to get them out. And they were probably ready to get out themselves. So nice for them to have some space. And a little bit about Abraham Lincoln in Springfield. So when Robert was small and the boys were just babies, Abraham Lincoln practiced on that 8th Illinois law circuit, which meant he traveled all over the country. Also, he was in Congress for a time, so Mary would have been here without him while he was in D.C. And so Mary needed help. She hated being alone, and that's the hired girl. We know that they employed at least 17 girls in this home, not all at once, but one at a time. They would have been teenagers from those local immigrant families. Not a bad deal for them because they got paid, they learned a skill, but they also got their own room, which is probably a little bit more than what they would have had if they would have stayed in their lower income households with their other family members. So not terrible. The shortest time one worked here was for maybe 2 weeks. It was an Irish girl. Her and Mary did not get along. We have letters of them separately complaining about each other. So she didn't last long. But then the longest that did work here was 10 years. So a wide variety of people. Okay? Any questions about the upstairs hallway before I take you down? No? I do want to mention, as those of you are walking through, the flooring in the hired girls' room is the only place in the whole home you can see the original floor. So get a good look at it, okay? All right, head on down. That room's really small. We're going to have to scrunch in, but I won't keep you in there long, I promise. I'm not going to torture you like that. I'm doing good with my schedule. I only was running late once, and that's not too bad.
There you go.
Not bad at all. Sometimes it's hard.
How many do you do a day?
Anywhere. Today I had 9. The most I've ever done is 13. So today it hasn't been too bad. There's a lot of us on, so we're just taking turns.
And do you get to move around to like the Capitol building, different
No,
stuff?
we just stay here. Yeah. Yeah, this is the only federal historic site in town. The other ones are state or city owned. Yep. But it is nice because if there's a museum you want to go to here, while you're at work, if you have time, you can just walk down there and go, and they're paid to go. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So, not bad. I got paid to walk around the Presidential Museum for 2.5 hours one day, and I thought, this is great.
We went to the sisters, the Lindsay home.
Yeah, not to eavesdrop, but that was kind of fun hearing our park ranger guide talk about her job and some of the perks and thrills of working at a place like this, in a place like Springfield. I think that's really exciting. I really admire the park rangers. They're minor celebrities to me in my books. This is just one of the coolest jobs you could have, and I have to admit I'm a little bit jealous of park rangers and their jobs. I think they're just tops.
Urbanize Springfield.
Okay.
Yeah. He made the neighborhoods. Okay, briefly, I promised you I wouldn't keep you in here long. Get a good look at the stove. The stove is the only thing in the kitchen that's original to the home. They bought it in 1860. At the time, Mary would have been hosting a lot. When you ran for president in the 19th century, it was customary for your constituents to come to your house to listen to what your platform was all about. Not like now where they travel the entire country and speak, so a little opposite. So she would have had to host all those people. And in one night, she invited 500 people to this home for a political party. Only 300 actually showed up, and she was really angry about it. Partly, there was some bad weather, some train delays, but there was a wedding of a family friend in Jacksonville, about 40 miles west of here, so some people went there instead. And she later said she didn't forget who chose that wedding over her party. She kind of held a grudge. But she would have been able to host those 300 people using this stove in this kitchen. So pretty crazy for a woman that didn't have to learn how to cook until she was married, right? So not a bad deal. But to wrap it up, the one other important thing about this room is the size. So the size of this kitchen is roughly the same size as the one-room log cabin that Abraham Lincoln would have lived in Kentucky and Indiana. And he would have shared those log cabins with 7 or 8 other family members at a time, just depending on who was living with them. And he was able to come very far with very little, hardly any money, almost no education. He did it all himself, and that was his whole platform when he ran for president. He was a self-made man. And he pretty much was. But he was quoted as saying he felt everyone should have a fair start in the race of life, and he dedicated his career towards that. But for us here at the home, it's also important that you leave here and remember him as kind of just a sentimental man, just a normal man that really loved his family, loved his diversity in his Springfield community, but also the diversity in his country too. Any more questions before I let you leave? No? Well, thank you all for coming. Oh, yeah.
Did they have their own vegetable garden here?
We believe that they had something. Yeah, Mary had kind of a black thumb. She was really bad at keeping plants alive. But luckily for her, the market was where that fire station is down here at the end of the street. So she didn't have to go very far to get food. Yeah. Okay. Hey, any more questions?
And the railings part of the original house, or is this just to keep us, you know?
Oh, these? Oh, yeah, they're just to keep everybody
Okay.
out of the rooms. No, they didn't have these. Yeah.
How did Mary end up earning an income to pay all the people that?
Yes, pension, government pension. Let's see. First ladies. So when they were out of the White House, you know, the president gets a pension when he's out of the White House. Well, her husband died, so she got a pension as well. And you also got pensions if your husband died in war. If you were a senator's wife, you got a pension. And so she was able to raise money, spent her pension, and she also had like a sale of a lot of her expensive clothes and jewelry that she was able to do too. Okay. Anything else? No? If you just want to pop open that back door, I'll let y'all go. Thank you so much, folks. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. You did an amazing job.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And forgive my camera work. I'm going to fight my way back against the flow of the crowd to get a little bit better look at that kitchen. Loved our guide. Her voice carried perfectly. She answered every curveball question thrown at her. She did a great job, as the Rangers always do.
She really, government didn't do her any favors. Her pension was not very much. And she made the mistake of being a woman at the time that advocated for herself. So she was sending out letters to important senator friends, general friends, people in the government that had been her husband's friends, and asking them to either petition for her to have a higher pension or send money.
Oh, no, you're good.
And that really embarrassed Roberts. That she would do that. Also, she was still spending money like she had it, and that was kind of the reason why.
Yeah, and again, there's our ranger still fielding questions when the tour was over. I kind of wanted to hang out and listen to her because she obviously was a Mary fan too, but I knew she had to get back to do her next tour. You know, doing many tours a day. And as you could hear at one point, there was another tour coming through the house. So it's a popular tour, and they're trying to accommodate as many people as possible. And there's a train going through Springfield. I love that sort of thing, so we'll add that to the end of this video. Very nice the way they have this done. You can go tour the Lincoln House, and then there's a couple of blocks worth of Lincoln's old neighborhood preserved, and some of those houses are set up like museums, and some of them have signs in front of them talking about who lived there and what they did. They got these benches here too, so you can just sit and relax and enjoy being in Lincoln's neighborhood. We did the ghost walk in Springfield last time we were here, and we kind of came listen to the ghost stories from those benches, which was quite a treat. Hey, and I just for the heck of it, here are some old postcards that I've got in my collection of the Lincoln home. I thought you might enjoy looking at those. But yeah, again, the National Park Service, I tip my hat to them. especially the rangers here. They do such a good job. I've had some great conversations in the visitor center with those rangers. They all care about what they're doing. They're enthusiastic, and they're just sweet little people, and I really appreciate what they're doing. One of my favorite national park sites, and we just had a great time here again. Check out the book Young Lincoln by Jan Jacoby. The author I mentioned earlier. Just a very sweet and honest book. I don't think Mr. Jacoby had an agenda. I think he was just trying to write an honest book about Lincoln. But yeah, Springfield, Illinois, great historic town.